Hi Matty, this is Julian, just to let you know that I'm here and ready to go when you want me. Right, the game seems to be starting, and this is Oliver Squire against Dan Rovira. So Ollie started with 6-1, made the bar. Dan correctly splits and comes down, gets hit with a 6-4. So Oliver's got off to an early edge in this game. He's escaped one of his back checkers. And he's managed to build some sort of an outside prime. So this looks like a good play by Dan. He understands the idea of safely bold plays. So he's saying I'm behind in the race, so getting hit and losing ground in the race isn't going to harm my chances too much. So Ollie's deciding he'd like to hit on the 20 point, which is what he's looking at. But then the problem is there's no really good one. So this is one plan. The other plan I think he might choose to look at is simply to make the 5 point and not hit at the bottom. So it isn't clear to me which play is 100% correct. This is perhaps the safest play, is that it sends another one of Dan's checkers back and stops him making the 5 point. So it gains in the race and makes it very difficult for Ollie to lose the game quickly. But he does have to shorten his prime in the process. So 2-6, Dan will come in and hit on the 5 point. The double 4 is a really good roll, so then he can come in, and one option is to make the 5 point. Another option would be to attack and unstack 6 point and make point on the 2 point. So one thing, so 5-6 Dan comes in, and I think he's right to come out. So the checker on the 20 point would be a target, but coming out is controlling the outfield, and his plan is to stop Ollie's last back checker escaping. So Ollie's having a think about cubing. So certainly there's nothing wrong in his position, but potentially the problem is there anything in the way of market losers? Is there anything he can roll where Dan will regret very much having taken? So he's got some blots to shoot at, but the problem for Ollie is he's only got 1 point in board. So I think it's going to be a very comfortable take for Dan if he gets doubled. So Ollie is cubing. Dan gives it up. So I thought that was a comfortable take, but it might well be that he's right and I'm wrong. So the format for the tournament is, I believe it's a Swiss tournament with a double elimination. So the plan was to have up to 192 players, so 3 groups of 64. Right, so back to this game. Dan started with 3-1, made the 5 point, and Ollie correctly split against the potential prime. Dan then rolled a 4-2, so he's made the 4 point. So this formation is what Bill Roberti calls the rack. So they were discussing yesterday and saying it's a means of torturing your opponent. So Dan could have still thought about doubling, but decided he was short on attack material, so he's still only got 8 in the zone. So in terms of closing his opponent out, he's a long way from that. And in terms of building his prime, he's still short of a few checkers. So the 6 is awkward for him here. So he's deciding to hit and come down. So I think that's probably right. So Ollie hits correctly. So Dan, I think, would like to come in with something in a 5. Double 1 certainly can't be bad. So he comes in and hits. So he could potentially hit again. So again, he's tied down by the fact he's only got 8 in the zone. So usually you might consider hitting on the 1 to execute a blitz. But here the problem is it's going to take you a long time to fill in the gap. So Dan is doubling. And again, I think this is a comfortable take. So Ollie's got 2 on the bar is very bad. But Dan has got to roll a 6 to make the 1 point. And then Ollie's going to have plenty of time to come in. And in addition to that, Dan's got a 3rd checker sent back. So he's only got, at the moment, 12 checkers that can potentially do the closeout. So 6-2 covering is clear. And then he can either bring down a builder or split. So Ollie brings 1 of his 2 checkers in. So Dan's got about 1 more free roll before Ollie's position gets active again and he's ready to try and improve his game. So I was saying about the format that there's about 3 groups of 64, and to win a group of 64 takes 6 rounds. So there's 4 rounds today, and the first 2 rounds tomorrow will be deciding who wins those groups of 64. And then there'll be the second chance of the players who've lost already 1 match. So double 3 for Ollie is probably his best roll. So he comes in and makes an anchor and points on Dan. So this was the potential problem with Dan's position when he doubled, is that he didn't have enough checkers to be able to make the 2 and the 3 point and complete the closeout. So Ollie's already thinking of redoubling. So he's got another blot he can hit with 6s at the bottom of the board, or he could potentially fill in his own 4 and 5 point. In terms of blitzing, he's got 11 in the zone, which is usually enough to be able to do a good blitz. But the problem is he's facing a 4-point board. So if he gets hit, that might well keep him out of the game for a while. He's recubing, and I'd be very reticent to say he's wrong. I mean, psychologically, I think the first game Dan passed was an easy take. So Ollie might get the feeling that he can double early and maybe get some points when he hasn't done enough to win the game. So again, I think Dan is right to take here. So 5-1 is a very good roll. There's 2 good choices. We can hit again or make the 5 point. And for me, this play is clear that you want to make the 5 point. Oh, so it's 5-2. Sorry, I saw the 5-1. So with 5-2, there's only 1 choice. So 1-6, Dan will come in and very happily hit. And now he might be able to exploit his 4-point board. Ollie comes in immediately with 3-5. So the 3 is good, but the 5, there's nothing good he can do with. So he's keeping all his checkers active. He could have played safely with 8-3, but that checker definitely doesn't want to go deep. Or we could try hitting, but again, the 1 point isn't the point he's after here. He's got more of a priming formation. If he hits on the 1 point, he's getting into a blot hitting contest when his opponent's got the stronger board. So there's a big upside with this play, that if Dan potentially fans, there's 3 more blots that Ollie could clean up. But I really don't think he's got enough checkers to be able to complete this attack at the moment. That he's got 3 checkers back and still 2 on the midpoint, so he can only have 10 in the zone. And at the moment, he's still only got this 3-point board. So Dan will have a good game if he hits, and a reasonable game if he can enter somewhere else. So I suspect he was right with the first play he looked at, which was entering and bringing the same checker out. So that gives Dan more opportunities to hit, but at least it's getting this checker into the game. So Dan's hoping, I guess, to roll a 5 over 6 at the moment to make the bar point anchor. So if we come out, we duplicate the 5. So I think at the moment, Ollie is going to be regretting having doubled or redoubled. That he's not getting the easy ride he was hoping for. So 3-6 fans, and now we've got to see if Ollie can clean up a lot of blots. 4-3 covers the 1 point, so this is going well so far. But there's a danger that when Dan comes in, he could have problems. So 4-2, he can come in with a 2 and split. Make the 9 point, right? So that makes 2 points. So that I think is clearly the best play. Double 3, he can't move the back checkers, but making the bar certainly isn't too bad. All 6 fans. So the problem Ollie has got here is his 3 checkers at the back are a long way from his front checkers. So the 6 looks like it's forced. He's got to play 7-1 with the 6 and shorten his prime. And at the same time, he wants to do something to get his back checkers moving. So now the game is on a bit of a knife edge that when Dan comes in, then he has a potential to hit and turn the game round very quickly. So 6-2, again, he's got only 1-6, as well as I can see, so he's got to play 7-1. And the 2, he has to shorten his prime again. So Dan's going to be in great shape when he comes in, if he comes in. So 3-1, and Ollie can't move his 2 back checkers. So he's looking to try and save something. So playing with 1 blot is definitely a good idea. So Dan is having a good summer holiday on the bar. So 3-2. Again, the back checkers can't move, so he can play half the roll on that side of the board, but he has to move another one of his builders to a bad point on the other side. So I think he's thinking, does he move the back checker forward 3 and waste the 2, or does he move the back checker forward 2 and waste the 3? Right, so 4-3, finally Dan comes in, and he can't hit anywhere, so he sensibly moves the same checker. So one interesting thing about Dan's position is he's got 7 points, and we sometimes refer to this as TMP, too many points. So he's only got 1 checker he can move without having to break a point. So double 3 is, I think, a pretty bad roll for Ollie. So he's lost all his outfield control, and again he's stuck with the 2 checkers back on the 3 point. So 5-4, couple of safe plays. So I think probably you play 13-9 with the 4 and then decide whether to remake the midpoint or bring that checker into the 4 point to attack. So Dan's chosen the safest option. 2-1. So this looks again a terrible roll. So Ollie's still stuck with his 2 checkers back on his opponent's 3 point, but he's going to have to break his board with this play. So he's got to expose a blot with the 1. So when your opponent starts breaking his board, you should think about doubling as Dan is here. So the 2-1 is a good roll. He'd rather have hit, but at least he's brought a builder into the 6 point. So 4-2. So this is a chance for Ollie to start his back checkers moving. So both players have 4-point boards if there's a blot hitting contest. And now with as Dan, I would think about doubling here. We've certainly got lots of things to hit, so we can hit with 2s, 3s, and 6s. The danger is if we redouble and hit, then perhaps our opponent will come in and re-hit us. Now, being Dan here and playing against Ollie, if you're playing a strong grandmaster, you want to get the cube high. So 2, 4, he can't hit safely, but he can hit 2 blots. So I think this is clearly right. And if Ollie doesn't roll a 3, he's certainly going to have to pass. So 6, 4 bans. So now Dan will think about whether he's too good, and he's decided he is because he had 3s and 6s to cover. So that's 29. So he's bringing some more attackers round to try and make the 2-point. So two things for black to do at the moment is, oh, that's perfect. That makes the 2-point. So now Dan, owning the cube, is going to be playing on and trying to get a gammon out of the position. So 2 things to do. One is to try and protect against bad doubles that might leave a shot. But the other thing is you want to try and get your checkers into your home board on high points. So 2 checkers closed out is usually about 40% gammons. But owning the cube and with white's board being slightly damaged, then Dan will be able to bear up slightly more aggressively than normal. So 4-2 is very good. So now he's got all his spares on high points and he's ready to start bearing off. So yeah, he's making a bold play. So he could play completely safe and play checkers off the 6 and the 5. But as I was saying earlier, given the fact white's board is a bit weaker than one would expect, being hit is not going to be fatal. So you can be prepared to take a small risk to try and increase your gammon winning chances, which is what Dan has done. So 6-3, he has to play safe. So Ollie's in a race to bring his checkers in from the bar and race round before he gets gammoned. So 4-3 again. Dan keeps as many points closed as possible. That's one of the objectives when you're bearing off and you've got your opponent on the bar. The more time you can, the longer you can keep him on the bar, the more chance you have of winning the gammon. So Ollie's still cooperating with this plan. 5-6 is 2 off, so now Dan has 9 left. So Ollie brings 1 in. So again, Dan's definitely right to play on here, that even if he leaves a shot and gets hit, he's still winning the game. So now Ollie under great pressure to race round. So 5-6 is a good roll, big number. 3-3 is brilliant. So Ollie has possibly 2 rolls to be able to save the gammon. So he's going to have to rely on rolling a big double. So yeah, this looks like this gives him 4 or better to save the gammon if Dan doesn't get his own double, which he did. So that gives Dan an 8-1 lead. So the Crawford rule comes into effect. So Ollie needs 8 points himself. So if he wins a gammon, that will effectively gain a game for him. So gammons will be valuable for Ollie, not very valuable, because it's not as though winning a gammon wins the match for him. So his gammon price will be above the normal 0.5, but not a massive amount. Whereas on the other side of the coin, Ollie doesn't mind at all being gammon. So he at the start of the game, he's actually favourite to win the game. So 4 is a brilliant roll. So he started well by making the 3-point, and Dan wasn't able to split. So bringing 2 checkers up is certainly reasonable. And this was the play that instantly came to my mind. So this is another good play. It unstacks the midpoint, which is one of the things we want to do from the starting position. But I think I favoured making the 4 point. I mean, another play would be an even more aggressive play to leave the back checkers where they are and just play 13 to 5 twice, which I think might well be the best play at this score. It certainly wouldn't be at a normal score where you're trying to avoid being gammoned. So I shouldn't be at all surprised if this is the best play. So double four for Dan. So this is a great roll. So he goes into the gap, what Mitchy calls the Kirin point. So if your opponent's made the 4 point and left the 5 point open, if you can go to that point yourself, you really devalue the 4 point that White's made already. So Dan plays it boldly. He makes the 4 point and leaves the shot. So Ollie is clearly right to hit. He's not scared about things going wrong and he's getting gammoned. So he's wondering with the two whether to unstack the midpoint or to play 6 to 4, I think. So unstacking the midpoint gives black a good 6 from the bar, which is very often an important factor after you've hit your opponent. So you almost always have your 6 point made, so your opponent can't enter with a 6. So the danger is when he enters with the other number, he's going to have a difficult 6 to play. So you don't want to give him a 6 to hit. But here there's a cost in the hitting. If he breaks the 20 point to hit, then he opens up the gammon loss opportunities again. So 5-6 is good roll. He can hit and keep the 20 point anchor, which is really what he wanted to do. So Ollie's now looking to. He was hoping to remake the 20 point, but he did manage to come in and save 2 of his blots. 5-4 is a good roll, saves a blot, makes a new point. So now one of the crucial questions is what the race is like. So Dan has got a 20 point holding game where he's very unlikely to be gammoned and has hitting chances for quite a while. So the roll is 5-2 and he seems to have played a 6. So 6-5. Ollie can play safe or he can take a risk and make a point in what I call the third quadrant. So that's what he's looking at and seeing if I take that risk now, if I get away with it, that point, is it going to help me bringing the position home? So it's very difficult to clear what I'd call 2 midpoints without a safe landing spot. Yeah, so I have a suspicion this is the right play. So the danger is that Dan will hit, but he's really got to be able to hit and cover to like it a lot. And even when he does that, he's going to give up his own midpoint. So I think this play is a bit weak. I mean, one overriding factor that Kit said in his analysis of these positions is whose position is improving. And you can clearly see that Dan's board is improving with every roll. So 3-1, we can just play safe. And now Dan will be hoping to cover the 5 point ready for any hits. So 6-5 is not a good roll because it doesn't cover. So he could run off his 20 point or the midpoint or do nothing. And it's not clear to me what he should be doing here. I think the problem if you run off the midpoint is that you don't have any direct coverage on the 2 points that Ollie's trying to clear. So I rather feel he should have moved one off the 20 point there, which is dangerous. He might have got gammoned, but I think it's going to increase his winning chances enough. So 5-5 is a great roll. So Ollie can clear one of his 2 difficult points. So having done that, he'd only got the midpoint to clear, and now he's got a couple of safe landing spot, so he can clear it safely with 4, 5, 6, 4. Dan correctly makes the 5 points, so now he's getting to a position where when he hits it, will probably win. So 6, 4. We can clear the 8 points safely, or leave an 8 shot now. So it's 2, 6, and 5, 3 will hit, so 4 potential hitters. And there's still a blotting board, so I think Ollie is right to pay now rather than later. So Dan has 4 hits. There's one of the hits, but it doesn't cover. And now Ollie will be looking to return hit. 4, 5 fans. So Dan now has almost an overwhelming position. So he could make the 1 or the 2 point or the bar, and making the 2 point seems natural. So now Ollie's got to both come in and jump the prime. So Dan now wants 1 or 5 to complete the 6 prime. Yeah, so he could escape his back checker, but I think his back checker's in little danger of being trapped. So I would make the prime, and then I guess you could slot the front. You could slot 1 as well. Yeah, so that's probably the very best play, is 12 to 7 to make the 6 prime, and then slot the 1. So we ultimately want to close our opponent out, and being hit, we're not going to get primed too much by him. So 1, 2, he comes in and covers the 2 point, I imagine. So now Dan really needs to escape his back checker. So 6, 5 is perfect. Ollie will try and fill in the 5 point, and 6, 1, he can slot it but not make it. 5, 1, not a great shot. So Dan still has a good race lead, so he's hoping just to, ideally to get a closeout, but just if he clears the bar point safely and gets into a race, he should have some sort of an edge. So 3, 2 makes a 7 prime, so that ties the world record. 1, 4, so now his plan is just to bear up safely. So 1 checker closed out gives you usually about 5% winning chances. So no gammons are worth nothing to Dan. So he's not taking any risks. He's just making the safest play. So if Ollie's going to get back in this game, he needs to roll a 6 right now, or he needs to be able to hit a shot. So 2, 1, how much risk? So we could take a checker off at a small risk, but I think maybe Dan is right in saying he doesn't want to take any risk at the moment. So 4, 1 again. I think this is right. There's some shot leaving numbers, whatever you do, but here, if Ollie enters, then at least he's out of the way. So now it's a straight race, and Dan seems to have 11 checkers left, and Ollie still needs 16 crossovers, so it's 6 rolls to 8. Now it's 5 rolls to 8, 5 rolls to 7. So it's getting to be desperation time for Ollie, and that looks like that's a miss, so that's going to cost him a whole roll. So now it's near impossible for him to win. So 2, 1 for Dan is the only way he can cooperate. So 11 checkers, 6 rolls, so there's another 2, 1. Maybe it's a 3, 1. Double 1 is 2 off, but now I think it's getting to be impossible. Right, so Dan ends up winning that one 9 to 1. So it was really that crucial second game when he won a gammon with the 4 cube that decided the match. So the schedule for today is, this was the first round, which was meant to be at 10:30, and the subsequent rounds today are at 1, 3, and 5 p.m. UK time. So officially at the moment, we should have nothing happening at the moment. So I will take a small break at this stage and possibly come back to you if the organisers find another match that they're going to cover in the interim. But the plan is that, or the plan was, that the next match will be televised or online at 1 p.m. UK time, and that's still an hour and a half away.